Oh, what's going on, everybody? My name is Eric, and I'm with Alamo City Agenda, and we are here with City Council candidate District 2, James Guild. Is it Guild or Guild?
Guiled like
Guiled.
wild.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So how was your weekend?
It was great, very relaxing.
Yeah? What'd you do?
Well, we always go to the Mecca Costco for our obligatory visit there, stock up. And we were going to go down to the Pearl on Saturday, but it was, as you know, a little bit cold.
Oh, yeah. For sure. I mean, it's like, what does Texas want to do? Like, I feel like they're bipolar.
Well, the groundhog did say we were in for 6 more weeks, but today's the first day of spring, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, there we go. Happy Spring Day.
It's spring.
Brenda says, good morning. Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning, Brenda.
And again, you guys can ask questions directly to just put it down here in the comments, and we'll be able to read them over as long as my tablet doesn't freak out. Brenda says she's sharing. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. So, first of all, what made you want to run?
Public service has been my life's calling. I joined the Army when I was 18, and I actually just retired 2 years ago.
Okay.
And just been doing some consulting work ever since for the government. As I mentioned to you earlier today, I was doing risk management, internal controls for the Defense Health Agency.
Okay.
But specifically District 2, I was watching the news one day, and they said that nobody had signed up yet to run for District 2. And I thought, well, you know, John Adams has a saying that if wise and honest men refuse, others will not. So I'm like, I'm a wise and honest man. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and see where it goes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult choice. Like, it's not something to be taken lightly. That anybody watching, running for office it's a whole different monster. What have you experienced right now so far that you're like, wow, okay, I didn't realize that?
All of being bombarded by interview requesters and
sorry, not sorry.
And the PACs, they were kind of like, fill out this survey and see if we will support you or not. So that was a little bit on the unexpected side. I mean, I kind of knew it was coming, but not to the extent that it did.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's been it so far. Also, the public exposure is at another level.
Right. Yeah. It's like nobody cared who you were before, but now it's like.
Right. Now they all want to know.
I don't mean you. I would just say, like, to me, that's what I felt like. I was like, nobody even knew I existed, you know. And then you put on that, and they're like, oh, I want to get to know you, kind of thing.
Right.
Is that how you feel?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what's your biggest struggle as a resident in D2?
Well, I would say property taxes is a main concern for a lot of the people in District 2. They're kind of high, so
just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. And you know, I was watching Governor Abbott's State of the State address the other day, and he said there was a $13 billion surplus. And he said in his speech that he wanted to see lower property taxes as a way to, you know, kind of even out the ledgers there. And that's where I would like to see, you know, some of that state money going is property tax relief. Yeah,
I don't see an end to it though. I'm like, it's been such a big thing for a long time, and it's like not.
Sounds like what you're saying. The two most certain things are death and taxes.
Probably.
So, yeah, that's where I would like to kind of push my agenda is gathering more resources from the state and federal levels. Here in D2, you know, we have the 410 and 35 junction, and they're building a new cloverleaf out there, which is great. It's good to see that they're improving. And then I think everybody has experienced that 35 North parking lot.
I think our kids
Friday night,
our kids will still feel that.
But if I'm correct, they did sign a Build Back Better plan. So I'm just wondering, you know, from the federal level, what are we getting from that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there's been a big issue with the streets and the construction in D2, right. And especially like Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
and that's a whole different animal because it has to do with the
It affects small businesses.
well,
yes.
yeah, that and TxDOT has a say in it, and
Right.
just a mess. So how do you plan on dealing with those situations?
Well, it's all about communication, as you know. So a little bit about me. My background is the last few years in the military. I was a defense comptroller, and I've been to the defense comptroller program, which is a 14-month program in Syracuse, New York, Syracuse University, where I got 2 master's degrees, one in business administration and one in public administration. And in fact, the public administration degree is from the Maxwell School of Citizenship. Shameless plug there, but it's the #1 public administration school in our nation.
Oh, wow.
So that provided me a solid foundation, I think.
Yeah.
But in all of that, it's about how you treat people with dignity and respect, and opening those lines of communication and finding common ground.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you this: a lot of things that I've seen some candidates, they're not personable. They're not. It's hard for them to convey what they're trying to say to the general public.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you would be okay with doing that? Like, would there be any challenges? Because there are some times where I've known people myself that they're really smart, but getting that message to people and not making them feel like like I'm superior in a sense. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. No, and you came right back to my point of communication being the key for everything. And treating people with dignity and respect and meeting people at their level. So that's something I've done extraordinarily well during my service in the military and my time as a contractor. And it's been the key to my success. So I don't see a problem with that going forward.
Gotcha. And just so you all know, we are at Folklores Coffee House on Grayson. So thank you guys for letting us use this spot. If you want to come down here, you can come in and ask a question directly. I always ask to do that. So we did have somebody last week come and ask a question that was really cool. That's the whole idea. A lot of people are kind of intimidated to say, "Oh, I can't interrupt you." No, come and interrupt us. It's fine. Betty says, "Good morning. I'm present." Hi, Betty. Thank you for joining. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments, and then we will read them out. So, what do you feel? Besides the taxes that you have heard from the community, that's a big problem.
People are concerned with social issues. I hear that, but I hear that from the news mostly, not from the people. Usually when I go and talk to my neighbors, they're concerned with, hey, when are we getting a hockey team? When are we getting a pro football team, believe it or not? And so, yeah, the taxes is always a big one, and then I think people perceive crime as a big issue.
Yeah. Now going to the sports aspect of it,
I'll warn you, I'm not a big sports guy.
No. That's the thing is,
District 2 does have the Alamo Dome, the AT&T Center. Yeah. Like, we are where it happens.
But the thing is that there's diminishing support for these areas, right? Because of the San Antonio Spurs haven't been getting their attendance levels, haven't been getting high. Obviously, I think one of the last few places on the roster, like they're ranked pretty down low right now.
Nothing against them.
No. But and I think they're doing it strategically, hopefully. But there's such diminishing support for sports here in San Antonio. There's talk about doing another baseball field downtown and, doing all that stuff. But we as a community are not supporting these sporting functions. So do you think it would be ideal? Like, let's say if a team came in while you're in office and said, hey, we want to build a, whatever it is in District 2, are you going to throw your support in it, like, wholeheartedly, or what are you going to do?
With those kinds of developments, I would have to see on what the plus side was, because there's traffic issues, going back to the roads. What kind of support are they going to be bringing in for that surrounding area to, improve or, bolster the traffic, the roads, that kind of stuff. So the infrastructure.
Okay. how are you going to convince the rest of the city council to do it that way? Because let's be honest, from what we've seen, a lot of these entities have been getting property tax abatements.
Right.
They've gotten, oh, well, hey, let's do this for you and try to lure them in instead of having them give stuff to us back.
Right. And that would all be negotiation. You
Yeah.
know, we would, there would have to be that piece of it. And, you know, there's in negotiation, the communication piece is important because sometimes there's more than just a pie in front of you. A story that I like to tell is, you know, there's an orange and two women want the orange. One might think that to cut the orange in half would be equal. But if you communicate and talk to each of the women about what they want the orange for, one woman wants to eat it and the other one wants the orange peel for baking, right? So if they communicate and talk about what, you know, their wants and needs, they can each get 100% of what they want out of that orange. So again, it just goes back to the talking with folks,
Right.
making sure that everybody's wants and needs are understood and on the table and what's the most important.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. It's just frustrating because it seems like San Antonio's like, hey, let's invite whoever we can. Like the Brahmas came down for
Right.
XFL. Great. They're using the Alamo Dome. Cool. But, you know, they did that with the Commanders a while back, the arena football team. And the Commanders ended up owing the city money. They never paid them back.
Well,
you know?
I think it's, you know, we see how big Austin is growing, right? And Houston and Dallas are, you know, above us in population, but I believe San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the U.S. And so checking my numbers, we were right behind Philadelphia and we're only trailing by 30,000 people, but that was a few years ago. So you know, being one of the biggest cities in the U.S. and third biggest in Texas, you know, it just seems like, you know, we're ready to take that next step, whatever it might be. I know they just finished the sports or the technology arena over at San Antonio, Port San Antonio.
Oh yeah.
That's the most advanced, you know, technologically advanced arena in the world.
Yeah.
I haven't been to a concert over there, but I heard it was spectacular.
Yeah. Well, and then they also have esports, which is a big thing, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I mean, but yeah, and it goes back to there's been the talk of the Spurs going to Austin, which, you know, they said it wasn't. But it's like why would Bexar County say, hey, if you move, then you're gonna have to pay a fine?
Right.
Like there's obviously some kind of talks there. You know what I mean? So it's just it's nerve-wracking that people are even thinking that, and that could even be a possibility. It's like, you know, it's not looking good for us, but hopefully
we can get
something
it together. Yeah.
Hopefully something. Anthony says, and again, we are Folk Lotus Coffee House, so come on by if you want to grab a coffee, ask a question, or you can just comment on here as well. Anthony says, citizens are experiencing. Oh, this is turned down. Anthony says, citizens are experiencing continuous abuse by police, rights violations. Police believe they are above the law as evidenced by repeated documented law violations. Would you consider actively seeking a special counsel type investigation into SAPD? And what would you do to support police reform? They need extensive retraining.
This might be an unpopular opinion, but yes, there was that incident where the police opened fire on the unarmed guy eating a hamburger in, what was it, McDonald's or something over there. But I think as a whole, I haven't heard a lot of people who on the individual level have experienced those kinds of things. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I just haven't heard about it. So I'm not sure, from my platform and from my experience, that reform is needed. There is a lot of crime in San Antonio. At least that's what I see on the news every day. But I think the police are handling it as best they can.
Okay. And I think it kind of stems from the point of that people were saying that cops were coming back in after they've done something, they're getting
that does need reform. Absolutely. As a risk manager myself, I do the same thing. You know, we can't have people asleep at the wheel and then have people coming in and doing the same bad behavior that they did before. That I will admit does need to change, but it's the same in almost every industry. They were just saying today, you know, the bank bailouts, right? You get these banking CEOs that come in, make all these risky decisions, pay themselves big old bonuses. The bank goes bust, but then what do?
Yeah.
They go to a new bank and they do the same thing over again, right? So it's not just in the police. I think it's every industry that needs to have those kind of, I don't know if they'd be auditors or watchdogs or whatever, but I will advocate for that kind of, that kind of reform.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see here. Betty says, how about the seniors and handicap in D2 that has a transportation problem and food insecurity problem?
Oh, I definitely agree with the food insecurity, which is, to me, it's disgusting that we are in a first world nation and we still have food insecurities, food problems. There is not access to healthy food like there should be.
Right.
I just think we're going to have some policy change on that in order to incentivize either small businesses or these mom and pop shops to carry more healthy, fresh foods at, accessible locations. That's the only way I see it changing.
What have been your experiences with any type of like the food distributions? Have you done any of those at all?
I haven't, but I've been around the city, and it's like some places you have to drive, more than 10 miles to get to a place where there's fresh food. Right. Just the other day, I was driving to my sister-in-law's house, and they're like, "Hey, pick up some fresh tomatoes on the way," and there was not a spot like within a 10-mile radius where I could get fresh tomatoes. Which is, as the viewer, suggested, that's an issue for people with handicap issues or, they don't have a car.
Right.
How are they going to get access to fresh food without having to pay a terrible upcharge for Uber Eats or whatever service that delivers?
Yeah.
That's not an option for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And we experienced that situation actually here where Folklotes, I teamed up with them way back during the pandemic, and we distributed a lot of food boxes and stuff like that. And the biggest issue, though, is that they were giving the stuff that they gave us in the boxes, not Folklotes, but like from the food bank and all that. A lot of the food was not
wasn't healthy. It was all processed.
Well, no. It was just stuff that they didn't even know how to use. Like it was just like maybe some cabbage or like just some or an excess of cabbage or you know what I mean? Sorry with the screen, guys. It's my tablet keeps kicking out. But so it would be stuff that people didn't know how to use or they couldn't use. It was like 2 gallons of milk and they were lactose intolerant or
that's
just all this stuff that it was not helpful or conducive to what they would cook at home. So it's just a lot of wasted food.
Yeah.
So I'm sure this has been brought up to the food bank or all these other places, but if it hasn't, it needs to be. So is there something you would like to take a look at if you do get into office? Because I don't know if anybody's even talking about it. I mean, I would hope so, but
I'll add it to the list.
Yeah.
I mean, because I see it, but you're right. If it's not being talked about, it's not gonna change.
Right. And I know a friend of mine, Jamie, she's part of the Food Policy Council here in San Antonio, and she's trying to do what she can to stop the food deserts. There's a lot of food deserts here. And so I know she's holding markets for seniors and stuff like that. So something I would definitely make sure to push to everybody, the seniors as well. Let's see here. Betty asked, why does he think... what does he think about SAPD? I think you kind of answered.
Yeah, I think they're doing as good a job as they can, given the circumstances. But
yeah,
I don't think we need any radical change there.
Okay. Regarding property tax, Kelly Wall says, regarding property taxes, would you support a no new revenue rate for the fiscal year 24 budget?
If for property taxes, yes. I mean, property taxes need to come down, not up. So if that's where it's coming from, then yeah, I would support not having any more property taxes.
Okay. Now it's going to be hard too, because we've seen a lot of these special projects like VIA and all this stuff that has come out, and without saying it, but saying it is, city council is voting on these things to where it's like, okay, well, we're going to implement this if you vote on it, and it'll be a slight increase. They leave the property tax name out of it. You know what I mean? So I think being more transparent on that, because a lot of these things they're voting on, and a lot of the public might not know that this is going to raise property taxes.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. And that's, again, part of why I'm running is because of my background, MBA, MPA, looking at these budgets, reallocating resources in order to prevent those kinds of, property tax hikes.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. Betty says they give expired food out. So for these food distributions. So that's not good.
No.
I mean, it's definitely not a good thing. Kelly says, thank you for your answer. So now there is an issue is, do you feel with SAPD situation, do you feel like you might not see this situation because you're not a person of color, or because there are sometimes that people might say things like that?
Yeah, it's I'm a white guy, so I definitely think there are those kind of social issues that need addressing. Again, maybe not necessarily with SAPD, but in our country as a whole.
Okay.
I mean, the issue that just happened in Tennessee, was there was no white person involved, right? And it was the same thing. I've actually had a law officer's knee on my neck in my time in service for no reason. I got a false report called on me. I was guarding a connex of weapons, and there was a other military exercise going on, and I told some folks to go away. They called the MPs on me, which led to as I said, me being cuffed and detained for just doing my job, right? Yeah. So I kind of look at it back to, I'm not saying that problems don't exist. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying I don't think that it's happening on a scale where we need to tear down the old system and build a new system based on one or two bad apples. Does that make sense? Okay. Like what happened before in San Antonio, yes, was tragic with the shooting of that individual. But I just don't think that and yes, one too many, but it doesn't constitute tearing down the old house and building a new one off of one bad individual.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. It's fair. And I got pulled over one time while I was putting up my campaign signs, and it's just odd, and luckily nothing happened, but I recorded myself because honestly, like, just being Hispanic, it's always been like you're kind of scared. You never know what's going to happen, how the cops are going to come at you, because there's been forcible stuff sometimes, or there've been really, like, I'm just gonna they've been jerks sometimes, you know what I mean? Right. And so, I think the only reason why he let me go, he didn't even write me a warning, is because I was running for JP, Justice of Peace, and it was just, but that shouldn't be a reason, you know what I mean? Because every time I've always gotten like a ticket, whether it's for speeding or whatever, that's fair. I understand that, but right. I think things change, it's just things are a little bit more heightened from seeing it in a different lens.
Yeah, seeing it on the news all the time.
Right. But yeah.
But that's not going to be, I mean, just to be transparent, that's not my main issue. That's not why I'm running. And I don't think that it is of such an issue that it needs to be the number one issue. I think that there's billions of dollars out there that San Antonio deserves that we need to make sure we're getting.
Yeah.
And then, as we talked about earlier, making sure that those people who are identified as offenders in whatever industry don't get the opportunity to continue offending in another position.
Yeah. Like yeah. And that actually did happen recently.
Right.
And that's just frustrating. Kelly says, yes, Eric, the city council will tell citizens they have lowered the property tax rate, but the city council knows that property valuations will increase, thus citizens still pay more property taxes.
Good point.
It's true. And again, I always want to remind everybody, protest your property taxes every single year, regardless whether it raised, lowered, still protest it.
Yeah, that's a serious issue, I think, which is going to require policy and a hard look, maybe some studies to get around that, because we're also facing inflation, right? So your property valuation is not going up just because, of it being more valuable in these supply and demand, high demand times, but also inflation. Our dollars are worth less than they were last year. And so, where do you draw that balancing line between, yes, I want my property to increase in value because the dollars are worth less, versus me having to pay more property tax?
Yeah. And that's the common misconception that a lot of people that I've heard.
Realize that value until you do actually sell the house.
Exactly. So
I'm with you on that.
Protest them. So that first step in your candidacy, what was that feeling like when you signed, you put in your form and everything?
It was exciting and surreal, to be honest. I'd always thought about running for office, again, because of my long history with service and wanting to do good, be that good and honest representative. But yeah, it's one of those moments where I never thought it would actually happen, and or at least to be on the ballot. Lucky number 7 for those of you.
Hey, there you go. Let me see.
So yeah, it's been an experience.
That's cool. How are you going to guarantee that you're not going to fall in the political trap that a lot of people do, just fall into that political arena and then they just get succumbed to it?
For sure. It's discipline. Discipline is one. And then also, again, my 20 years of military service, I'm not saying we couldn't lean left or right or get involved in politics. You could, but it was something to where you had to do completely on your off time, and it just was, we'll just say, discouraged. And so I've never been, left or right leaning. It's just been about the service. And I don't see why that would change for me getting into it. There's a lot that I have to learn because I don't really consider myself a politician. I consider myself a public servant. And so I would want to maintain that. And then just the discipline of, doing what I have to do to represent my community in the best interest. I'm a big Star Wars, Star Trek fan. Spot good of the many outweigh the good of the few or the one, right? So.
Yeah, it's tough, because especially for people that are new to politics, it could be kind of like right out under their feet, you know what I mean? And they don't even realize it. That's why I was so skeptical about people who I talked to or hung out with, or because it's like you can't trust people.
Right. Well, when I was mentioning to you, this is the first interview that I've done. You might be able to find, I think the League of Women's Voters put out a thing. So I went in there and filled out my profile, gave them a profile pic, which I don't have the beard in, if you happen to look at it. But yeah, I'm taking it slow because, to be honest, I don't think there's need to really push hard and get out there and like expend a whole lot of energy until the runoff. Because I'm pretty sure with 10 candidates in D2 that we'll get to a runoff.
Yeah.
And so that'll be the time to really push forward. And that will be, as I would say all this to lead up to your slippery slope of that's when the PACs will come after you and, you know, hey, are you on our side? Do you want our support? Well, then this for that, quid pro quo, you know, sort of thing. So we'll see when/if we get there.
Let's see here. What is your favorite small business restaurant in District 2?
Easy. 225 Urban Smoke. Up there, it's on Riddeman and near Harry Versbach, that corner.
Okay.
Yep, that's where I had my retirement party. They do a mean brisket. Actually, everything there is phenomenal. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Any other ones that you enjoy? Any other locations?
This place is actually really calling to me. It's funny because I grew up as a teen in the 90s, and so my group, my clique, we were kind of on the punk side. So looking up here, seeing the Misfits and all that kind of stuff, and the music, it's and the coffee is fantastic.
Right.
Like, I was one sip, and I was like, wow, this place is.
Yeah, for sure. And Folklores has always been about the community. So, when they were on the south side and now here, I mean, they've always have been about the community. That's why they allowed us to do this here, because they know how important it is to give information to knowledge to the community itself. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
How are you going to prevent struggles for small businesses with construction and things like that? Like, prevent it from
I again, watching the news, I see up there on St. Mary Street what an issue it is. I think the city did eventually come up with a grant program, so they're getting some grants. That's not enough, but I think you need to attack those issues early in the planning phase. Right. So that has to be baked in when you're talking to the contractors, the DOT, as you said, and all those folks. So that would be my remedy for that, talking to the small business owners who it's going to affect, and then having them be part of the communication process in the early stages, because we all know that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure,
right.
And the pound of cure they're given on St. Mary's, I don't think is enough.
That's about that's a quarter of a pound, if that. The CPS rate hike that's scheduled to happen, I believe, next year. Are you for or against it?
Oh, against, of course. And I think it's, the winterization. I don't think enough has been done to.
What do you mean? They put a bunch of, paper on it.
Without selling too much, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I actually just recently got the chance to tour a power plant around the area, and their winterization stuff, to me, it seemed more like a lip service, or they were just placating. I believe they got grants or they got money in order to do these upgrades, and the upgrades that they did were, I don't think they benefited everybody. I think they benefited the plant, or it was just a, check the block sort of thing.
Right.
So, and I drive around town and I see, the trees that are entangled in the power lines, and it's like, whose responsibility is it to clear that? And I'm just not completely in favor of the privatized power company. We saw what happened with Enron back in the 90s, and what they did to California and those taxpayers, and then it was all just nobody at the top being held accountable.
Right.
So why should we hold the users, the end users accountable when the CEOs and the folks that are running it are off running rampant?
Yeah.
Same with the banks, same with a lot of these institutions. The executive officers are not doing their job. I mean, us both working in fraud and risk management, that a lot of this stuff could be prevented if they had the correct tone at the top.
Right. Well, and at the end of the day, though, you realize that a lot of stuff doesn't. The policies don't get put in place until after, and you're like, oh, we lost too much.
And even still, even with those policies in place, if nobody's there to enforce them, they'll
Right.
go
Yeah.
unobeyed.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
So let's see here. What are your thoughts on utility disconnections? I mean, it's I know they're going to start doing the disconnections back again, pre-COVID and everything like that. So, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think there's a different solution we could do, especially for like people that low income and things like that?
Yeah, I don't think it's not a good situation for either side. Yeah, I don't really have an answer. I don't know enough about if there's a 30, 60, 90 not paid. Again, I think we need to try and meet people where they're at. So maybe they can't pay their bill in full, but if they could do something, then I think that would be enough to keep the lights on, so to speak. Because nobody should get, disconnected, especially if they have young kids, if they're a known low income,
Yeah. Are you going to advocate for the city to, enforce small, like businesses, like big businesses and the city entity, like buildings to turn off their lights if we do have something that happens like when COVID, or no, I mean with COVID,
the winter storm.
Storm. Because that was the biggest issue is people were out of power, but yet they still had the downtown lights on. They still had the Riverwalk Christmas lights on.
I do have a position on this because I will tell you I did not lose power at all during the winter storm, except for the one day when they were doing the roaming. My power got turned off, and then suddenly I noticed on the map the Dominion had power. So, why is it that in our low income D2 gets turned off and then the richest of the rich get their power? So, yeah, I think though that's kind of ridiculous. We need to go back and look at the policy on that. And then, but again, not only look at it, but then enforce it if that situation comes up.
Right. Yeah. I was so mad. I
was livid.
And I get it. Like there's some areas that if they're next to a hospital, which I mean, we have, Brook
Army Medical Center.
Right here. I mean, there should be at least something. Granted, there's no real that many houses in that area, but still something. Betty says, do you know about VIA's new rapid transit plan coming out San Pedro and the problems some neighborhoods will have? I don't know if she says 11 miles or 0.11 miles going from airport to the south side of town, or 11 miles.
So I apologize. I don't know about that. I'm not familiar with it.
What do you think about our transportation system? I mean,
I'll be honest, I haven't ridden the bus. I planned on riding a bus just to see what it was like because I know that a lot of my constituents, ride the bus. So I wish I could comment on it more, but I really can't. It seems like it's pretty good, but having never experienced it, I think, again, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, we talked about the handicaps and the transportation. I know in my neighborhood, there's a VIA bus that picks up a handicapped person across the street from my house. I don't know what that situation is or what program, but I mean, that seems positive to me that the city would come out and pick up this handicapped person, what seems individually, because it's one of those big vans. And
the VIA Trans?
Yeah, the VIA Trans.
Yeah, they have the VIA Trans. They also have VIA Linked as well, which I believe is in D10 and in D8 as of right now by UTSA. And it's kind of like an Uber, but they come and pick you up in specific spots, and they can, it's low fares, which is.
I mean, that sounds reasonable.
It does, yeah. So let's see here, the baseball venue downtown. What are your thoughts on it? If it does come out, because it seems like they're pushing very hard.
So I think, if it ends up being in D2 or District 2, I'd want to see what the pros and cons are, and again, back to the property tax issue. I think San Antonio has a lot of potential. I just don't think that's the truth, right? Those big businesses should want to come here, and they are coming here. But that means they need to pay their way. Like, what is going to be our benefit for them coming here? So it shouldn't just be us placating to the big businesses. I think we need to really see what they bring to the table.
It's not. It's just not. It's just looking at everything, like everybody, they're just pushing for it. There's very few city council members that are like, oh, like we need to, make sure this is not going to, hurt the citizens. But at the end of the day, it seems like a lot of it's like, oh, we need to bring these people here to survive. We don't. I think we need to.
There's an amount of revenue and taxes that come in from those big events, but I think the strain that it puts on the infrastructure should be, we need to get more upfront.
Yeah. And Betty was saying it's 11 miles and millions of dollars, but you were saying that you don't know too much about the rapid transit plan, but that's fine. So I'm sure you're going to hear about it pretty soon. Okay, so what's your idea of self-care?
That is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking. And I think mental health is, that is one of those issues that I'm not sure that the city or the state can solve, but it's definitely something that everybody needs to take, put at the top of their list. Just lately, I've been for self-care. I got on this 75 Hard program where you do 2 workouts a day, have a special diet, no drinking, things like read 10 pages of an actual book, which has really been amazing. So I've been using that time to self-reflect and, really see what my purpose is going to be in going forward in this life. As I mentioned, I just retired doing the risk management consultancy work now, but you really need to reflect and, for me, it's been what kind of more discipline can I put into my life to improve my life? And disciplining myself has been a big help for my mental health.
Right.
And it's really surprising just reading those 10 pages of an actual book.
An actual book, not
Instagram. In the last 70 days, I've gotten through like 4 or 5 books. Oh, wow. And whereas in reading actual reading a book is something that I've been wanting to do more of, but just haven't taken the time to do. Yeah. And so doing that, it's like accomplishing a goal. Same with the working out and the, a little bit of dieting, less sugar in my diet. And then seeing those results has been fantastic. So that's been my self-care plan, to answer your question, but it has very much improved my mental health, and which, the benefits are ongoing.
Yeah, and that's a lot of things that I think a lot of people are hitting right now is mental health.
Yes,
and that's awesome. Especially, I'll be honest, the younger kids right now, they're the ones who are pushing for it, and I applaud that because it's, I feel like our generations have been like, oh, don't talk about.
Right, it's a stigma.
Yeah, it's a stigma, all that stuff, and it's. I feel like the kids now are like, no, let's talk about it. And I think that's really cool. Let's see here. Betty says, we appreciate your program. Wish more people would use things like this so they would know how to vote. Thank you, Betty. Appreciate it. Let's see here. What is a hobby of yours?
Like I said, I'm a big Star Wars fan. So
who's your favorite character?
Right now, my wife and I, of course, we love Grogu, aka Baby Yoda. So Mando's out right now, so we'll just white knuckle till every Wednesday.
Don't say any spoilers. Yeah. Don't say any spoilers.
My wife and I enjoy working on our garden or our yard. Picking out the weeds. We got some roses, so we love to spend out some outside time around our house. Trying to build a shed in my backyard. That's been involved a lot of digging and blisters on my hands. So yeah, those just spending time with the family. It's just me and my wife. We don't have any children. But yeah, that's kind of the hobby.
That's awesome. What are your top 3 characters?
Anakin, of course, aka Darth Vader. Right now, Baby Yoda, and I like
Grogu.
Grogu, that's right. And I
And
like,
see Pedro
he's like-
Pascal. He was like, "Oh my god, I said, Baby Yoda on TV."
and number 3, you know, Moff Gideon too.
Okay.
That actor, I forget his name, but he's just fantastic.
Yeah.
He plays that part so well, and he was in Breaking Bad and a lot of other things, and he's
Yeah.
a great character.
Have you seen the Star Wars land in Disney World?
I seen that on, but I haven't been there. But
It's awesome. It's amazing.
have you been?
Yeah, we went to Disneyland
Oh
and
my
in
God.
Disney World recently in January, and we built our lightsabers.
Yeah.
And
So you're saying worth it?
yeah, definitely worth it. I suggest Disneyland because you have everything there.
Mhm.
You have Disneyland, you have the Galaxy's Edge. Whereas with Disney World, you have to go to Universal Studios to do Galaxy's Edge, and then if you want to go like the regular Disney,
Mhm.
like Magic Kingdom, then you have to go. So I like Disneyland because you have everything in one location.
Okay. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, but the it is expensive, like the lightsabers, but it's a cool experience to like
Right.
just sit there and or stand there and like do the whole thing.
And then you have that memento to be on your mantle for forever.
Yeah. So
who's your favorite characters?
Ahsoka Tano.
Oh, okay.
Ahsoka Tano is my favorite because she's not a Jedi. She's not a Sith. But the fact that she's probably one of the only ones that wields a white blade
Mm-hmm.
or white blades. And when I found out how they do that, it blew my mind, and it just made me appreciate her even more. Do you know how they do the white?
Like I know the red, but I don't know the white.
So the way the white comes about is you would have to kill a Sith and take their stone from
That's
them,
right. Now, okay.
and then purify it, and that makes it the white color.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's just badass.
It's at another level. Yeah.
That's badass. So when you see, Ahsoka Tano, I think now she is wielding the white blades.
Yep.
Because back in like the Clone Wars and all that, she didn't. She was green and then blue. But now seeing, I'm like, wow, that's just like a whole nother level. And obviously, she was taught by Anakin.
Right.
So her thing is like just beyond amazing skills.
I don't want to derail the D2 talk, but have you read a book, or which Sith did she get her crystals from, or were they Inquisitors?
It was one of the Inquisitors.
Okay.
And she actually, if you look at the Tales of the Jedi,
Mhm.
did you see
Yep,
those?
I watched them. I
So-
just watched them 2 days ago.
Okay.
Binge watch.
So the fact that she killed a Sith
Oh, that's
without
right. Yeah.
any weapons,
Oh,
like
yeah.
I'm like, dude, like I haven't seen that. Like it's just amazing. So that's what makes me appreciate her, and the fact that she grew up like in
Yeah.
front of everybody, like the Clone Wars and
Mhm.
all that stuff, and it's just she's a badass, and especially like Mandalorian.
Mhm.
He's like, no, don't kill him. Yeah, Mandalorian's a badass, and she's like, no, please stop.
Yeah, Bo-Katan sent me.
Yeah. It's like that's just like okay. She's a badass. So sorry we got off topic there, but
To be continued.
yeah, to be continued. What's your take on the hostage population? What are your plans on focusing on and dealing with those situations?
Did you say
The
hospice?
houseless.
Oh, homeless. So personally, full transparency, like having served in 20 years, there's a lot of veterans populations, that are homeless. And I'm not saying it's 100% a choice for them, but it's definitely where that mental health comes into play. And I think there has been a lot of talk going back to the mental health
Mm-hmm.
stuff of getting, making some programs and getting some help out there. And I think that's where I would take it, is more access to mental health. Again, we live in one of the richest nations on earth, and we're in the 6th or 7th largest city. Well, San Antonio is doing very well. obviously we're collecting a lot of property taxes, right? I think there's room, and if there's not room in the budget, room can be found for providing mental health or, some more programs for these folks. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff now that's out there.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what the places downtown.
The Haven for Hope.
Haven for Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I volunteered there in the kitchen serving breakfast, and that's a great program. And I know there's others out there, but it's also just you got to meet people where they're at, right? And if there are resources, you have to link those people to those resources, because just because the resources exist doesn't mean that those people who need them know about them.
Would you ever, one of the council persons at this, go into Haven for Hope, like undercover, and see what it's like as a person?
I mean, if somebody really wanted me to, I could do that.
I mean, obviously, without any camera, we're not doing this reality show, but no, like just to see how it is, like just to get a real grasp, because I don't think a lot of people understand how it is in there, especially people in power, things like that. And from what I've heard from people, it's hell in there.
Really?
And yeah, you have to be clean or whatever. You have to not use and stuff like that, but. I think at the end of the day, though, there's a lot of issues that are happening in there. I don't know what exactly recently, but I think it's something that I think we need to get a more handle of what's going on.
That's the first I'm hearing about it, so I'd be interested to know more.
And that's what I heard during my campaign. People would come in and tell me, hey, my brother, my so-and-so was in there, and it was like hell, and it's, if it's a great program, why would it be hell? You know what I mean? And it wasn't just one issue. There was several issues. So several incidents that were brought up to my attention. So I think it would be something that we would need to look at. But also, I know they were trying to do some houses that were like tiny homes. Will you advocate for something like that?
I do like that idea. The tiny home idea.
How will you be able to sell that to the public? Because they obviously have to do it in an area, right? And then the homeowners around the area would have to be okay with it.
Well, we got a lot of space here in San Antonio, especially in District 2, Again, we're just going to have to meet people where they're at. We're going to have to open those lines of communication to everybody who's involved. And I think, you make your money up front in the planning phase. So,
okay. Gotcha. And then your thoughts on the eminent domain. What are your thoughts on that, and how will you go about that?
It's a tough one, right? That's where the good of the many outweigh the good of the few or the one. It's the dark side of that, you could say, right? So I know there's that issue right now in downtown by the Alamo with that gentleman who owns a bar.
Moses Roses.
Yeah, Moses Roses. And, he's asking like 16 million or something like that for his property. And, anytime the government has to come in and, exercise eminent domain, it's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths, right? So it's just one of those things where you're going to have to come to the negotiating table and find the best solution.
Well, it came down to a vote, a city council vote, and it was 8 were for it and 2 were against it. So 2 were against it. It was in city council 5, and then actually the current councilman here in D2 voted against it. When I talked to Councilman Castillo in District 5, she said that because of the point that it was a project by the state and not something that was just beneficial for the community, that's why she was against it. Do you feel that way, or do you think that it's...
I can empathize with that, and the reason I say that is, being a project for the state and not necessarily something that is public and used by everybody, So I'll give you an example. My grandfather, his job after he served in World War II was to go around and buy the land that our nuclear silos are built on. And so many times he would encounter farmers or people who didn't want to sell. And then unfortunately there were times when he couldn't make a deal and it would have to go to eminent domain, right? But that was for, national security,
Right, yeah.
yada yada. Whereas I think this project, again, they're built museum. Okay, right. So a museum where people would have to pay and go
Right.
see and be entertained versus an interstate or a nuclear silo
Yeah.
or something that's like truly needs to be, built.
Right.
Is that, I think that answers the question of the difference between it being a museum versus infrastructure or something that really needs to happen.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the whole Alamo situation. I mean, it is a project that was done by the state. A lot of people did not want it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a waste of taxpayer money. You're looking at, was it? I think it was 700 million or so. Ridiculous amount of number. It's
Right.
ridiculous. And yeah, it's just just want to build a wall around the Alamo and basically just make into this whole thing and buying up all the property.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. I didn't know about that, but those are the kind of things where I think I bring the most value to the table as city councilman because of my background as having an MBA, having the MPA, doing the fraud risk management kind of work that I've done for the Defense Health Agency. You're able to go in there, look at those budgets, look at what makes sense and what doesn't, and reconcile it against policies and what the constituents want. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
If nobody wanted it, on a whole, or at least they're having buyer's remorse now, then that's something that maybe needs to be looked at again.
Yeah. And it's obviously there was a whole issue with the cenotaph, and there was a burial remains still there, and there was a lot of issues that were surrounding it. It's been a mess. So
Right.
yeah, it's just okay. So well, thank you for that. For as far as with telling us your position on the eminent domain. Okay, so Kelly says yes, there are multiple issues with Haven. To include homeless individuals do not feel safe there. That's what I have heard as well.
I don't know if Kelly can answer back right away, but do they not feel safe from the other members that are there or from the staff and the people that are, administering the program? That would be a distinction that would need to be made.
Yeah. Let us know, but Kelly, what you've heard as well. I attended a meeting at Haven for Hope. This is Betty. I attended a meeting for Haven for Hope and had to be checked in at a gate. It was not clean, and then I was locked in and couldn't get out. So.
Oh yeah, I remember there being gates there when I went to volunteer. They kind of buzz you in. It was very clean in the kitchen where I was serving the food. We had to wash our hands, wear gloves.
And Kelly says it was both. So it was both the individuals and the staff. So.
Well, and again, I think with all the programs, including the police and top to bottom, right, there needs to be accountability,
an audit,
right? There needs to be somebody watching, and then also that next step of holding people accountable,
right?
If there is a policy in place, we need to make sure that policy is being enforced,
right?
Because
or just a policy,
right, or change the policy, because just because there is a policy doesn't mean that people are obeying it.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, how can people get a hold of you? How can people donate to your campaign?
So I'm not doing any donations.
Okay.
And we're still setting up my Facebook page, and then we'll do a .com or a email, or excuse me, my email is james.m.guild, GUILD.4SA @gmail.com. So they want to reach me there.
Are you doing any block walking? Are you doing any block walking or anything?
Not yet.
No?
Again, I'm gonna wait and see how the runoff goes.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on, and thank you everybody for joining. Um, Stay tuned. We have 2 more interviews today, but we appreciate just the engagement that we have with the community. Thank you for just joining and giving us your there you guys.